It's a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 do.
Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Spirit Cafe. I'm Barbara Schreiner Trudell, and this is my co-host.
Cheryl Rogers.
And we are so delighted that you've chosen to join us today. This is going to be a remarkable show. So let us begin with the land acknowledgement.
Isn't it always remarkable?
It is always remarkable
Okay.
because you are remarkable. All right. We work, live, and play on the traditional and historical territory of many First Nations. And as we gather on Turtle Island, we as settlers are grateful for the opportunity to meet here. And we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years, including the Métis, Inuit, and all other Indigenous people. We also acknowledge that as we continue to grow and expand on these lands, there is still unresolved and dangerous inequality and discrimination toward our BIPOC and 2S LGBTQ plus family. And by making these acknowledgements, we strive to be allies and take an active part in reconciliation. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality. We are one. Well, today we have a remarkable woman with us, Janet Law, who is, oh man, she's got some stuff. It would take me the whole show to read her bio and all the stuff that she's done, but she's a lifelong Unity student, and her current creative project is Conscious Conversations. She works in the healthcare field with prenatal and postnatal care, and we had a great discussion around the topic of breastfeeding. So we're going to talk today about these wonderful, wonderful creative conversations, conscious conversations. Please welcome Janet Law to our show. Janet.
Welcome me. Welcome you. Welcome we, you and me and we. I love it. And, you know, I love the little video that you show about change, because this morning I'm thinking, what am I going to wear on the show today? Because I heard that I had to comb my hair and make sure that I at least, you know, didn't have pajamas on. And so anyways, I'm here and that beautiful land acknowledgement. And I'm just so pleased. Yeah. Change. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the saying, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I think, you know, from reading an article about you, Janet, and seeing all the things that you have done and achieved and accomplished, you're one of the most accomplished women I think I've ever met. And that creates change. And so we are so blessed, and I am so grateful for all that you do, all that you've done, and all that you continue to do. And one of the things we're talking about love and prayer and oneness today, and I was just when I'm reading all this, I'm thinking to myself, you know, we say that prayer is important. My big issue is the meaning that most people give to the word prayer, which is beseeching someone outside of us for something. And I know that's not what you mean. Can you expand on that for us a little?
Well, I would say personally for me, prayer is about affirming what what I want, you know, that kind of conversation that I have with the great divine creator, God, divine intelligence, creative intelligence. And then I go into a place of meditating, listening for the answers that come. And sometimes they come right away, and sometimes they come at a later time. But all I know is when I don't pray or meditate one day, I notice it. If I don't do it for 2 days, my partner, Brian, notices. And if I don't do it for 3 days, the whole world notices. So that's what I know about prayer and meditation.
And I like that's exactly it. It's affirming something. So saying that something is as the way we want it to be, to see and experience, and listening. And I think, that's a big thing, that most of us don't realize. When we pray, instead of speaking out there, asking for something, we need to go within and just listen and be still.
Mhm. Be still and know that I am, because I am is a powerful statement in itself. I am healthy. I am wealthy. I am. And that is the connective oneness that we speak about, certainly within the unity movement, but with all the wisdom traditions around the world is that oneness. Yeah.
Yeah, and all the new thought movements, right? CSL, and their humanities team, which is Neil Donald Welsh's, came out of Neil Donald Welsh's experience and books, and they all talk about oneness.
Yes.
And really how our thoughts, words, and actions are what create. And so that's where we need to be mindful, and have a conscious conversation with ourselves.
And the way we use the I am more often than not is in the negative. I am sick, I am tired, I am broke, I am fat, I am old, I am, but in that negative context. And given that I am are the two most powerful words in the English language, we want to shift that and start putting, like you said, Janet, I am health, I am wealth, I am love, I am peace, I am light. That begins to change that whole energy. And we make demands on the universe rather than, wishing and beseeching and hoping for something. We just know that we have within us every capability.
And when I find myself in the human condition, because we all are there many times, I find myself, if I am going on that track of affirming something that I don't want, I immediately say, when would now be a good time to change that? When would now be a good time to change that? Because that is it's a switch. You just flick the switch and you move it in a different direction. Yeah.
I had a student a few years ago who would always sit back and go, cancel, reprogram, and then put an affirmation in as soon as she became aware of that negative thinking, which we all go to at some point in time or another, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the human condition is an interesting place, which is why the self-conversation, relationship with the divine, relationship with self, and relationship with everyone else, like those are conversations that are happening sometimes simultaneously too, when you're in conversation with someone else, you really have to be centered in your own self, and that centering comes from what I believe the I am, or the oneness. That's where it starts. So yeah.
And there's so much new awareness. I think what I love about today is that, we're no longer hiding things in the back of our closets. We're now stepping out in front going, it's okay to just be you, that there's 8 billion people on the planet. Every single one is unique and special and all different. And by that difference, we actually have this glorious tapestry called humanity. And I think that as we come to understand our own self, rather than comparing ourselves with somebody else or competing with somebody else, when we just find who we are and live that, I think that creates a great sense of freedom and peace for us and for our world.
Yeah, the individual expression, the individual expression going out into the world and expanding as the oneness that we all are. That's the truth. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, from reading that article, can you tell us a little bit about the near-death experience you had when you were
Yeah.
22?
Yeah, I think that is a good conversation. I actually, there's two states of being. There's useless, unnecessary suffering and useful, necessary suffering. And I would say I was in the useful, necessary suffering in that I was born with a congenital abnormality in my intestinal tract. And I, throughout till I was 22, had what I would call partial obstructions in my intestinal tract, but they couldn't determine what it was. So finally, when they did, it was an emergency situation, and I was leaving my body. I literally could feel the life force leaving, and I was starting to be quite unconscious as the body became septic from the situation at hand. And so they took me right up to the operating room, and I remember the doctor looking straight in my eyes and saying, "We're going to do everything that we can. You are in good hands." And I felt that comfort, and I felt that strength, and I felt that spiritual energy within the room. And then um, all of a sudden, I was above my body, looking down, watching what was going on, but the body was down there, and I was going somewhere else. And I did go into this incredible lightness of being, which I have never experienced before and never have since. And that lightness of being was this incredible force of visual light, but also light, like an eternal light that I kept going towards and going towards and going towards. And all I could see in the very distant were some figures of people that I knew, mainly my grandmother, Maggie, she was waiting. And about 3/4 of the way in this experience, there's not really a number to explain it, a voice came. And it was the voice, I believe, it was a Holy Spirit. It was a holy shift moment. And the voice said, "You need to go back. You have more to do. You have more to do." And immediately I was back. I was back in the body. It changed me forever. My level of fear was completely reduced to the nothingness from which it came. And I remember speaking to the doctor after, and back then in 1983, you didn't speak about these things with doctors generally. It wasn't a topic of discussion, and I didn't know anything about tunnels and light and all of that. But he said to me, I asked him, did I die on the table? And he said, "Yeah, you did. And but we brought you back. You were strong. You were healthy. You are well now." And yeah, it was a very milestone moment in my life, and I have never been the same since that experience, for sure.
Wow.
Something like that changes you forever.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of death is now gone.
Yes.
Because in the moment that you're moving in that, there's just this peacefulness, this it's the most beautiful, comfortable freedom ever. I've experienced it once as well, and it was just sublime.
Yeah.
Until the decision to come back.
Yes.
And then it was like, holy crap.
Yes.
Immediately I went into fear for a moment. What would my family have done if I would actually let go? But while I was in that state, it wasn't there. And I think that does change us forever. So moving forward in life, there's a whole new process when the fear of death has been eliminated. And the reality of this human experience changes quite dramatically. Can you speak a little bit about how your life became different, like what it was like before and after?
Yeah, well, first thing is this idea of useful suffering. You know, all of that experience for all those years, it had a purpose, and the purpose was it woke me up spiritually. It awakened me in a way that I wouldn't have, I believe. And like after I'd recovered, I quit my job. I had been working as an education assistant in a museum, and I loved that job. I had always wanted to go to theater school. And I had signed up previously when I got out of high school, and circumstances didn't allow me to go. And that was the first thing I did was I went immediately into my creative self and doing what I wanted to do in that field. And it was glorious. It was wonderful. And it took away all what I would say the barriers that I thought were there. And what a way to jump into life than to go into theater school where you're completely deconstructed, like everything deconstructed. And, like you are naked on the stage basically in everything, and you learn things that you never would experience. It really is a form, I believe, of artistic expression can be a form of therapy. It really was, and it was really helped me after that experience too. And I was different. I like the fear just is not something that is in my experience. And if it does come up, I can quickly release it. But once you've had that experience, you are changed immediately. Yeah. So I expressed more, like I became much more in tune with what am I here to be and express in the world? Like what is, to be and express my true self, our authentic self. And I say to all our viewers out there right now, what is inspiring you? What is it in you right now that is in your soul going, let me out, please let me out?
Yeah.
Have you had any experience like that, Cheryl?
I have not. I'm almost envious. Like,
you're hilarious.
It's interesting. What I can tell you that I have experienced twice in my life were 2 vehicle accidents where everything slowed down. It was like slow motion, and there was no fear whatsoever. One was with my husband, and I remember actually reaching out and putting my hand on his lap and saying, it's going to be all right. It's okay. It's okay. And that afterwards really amazed me, that slow motion, that feeling of just no fear. I don't even know what I was feeling, but just being in that moment and experiencing it slowly. So that for me was very interesting and curious. And it just shows us that we have these preconceived ideas, which I think, from everybody else's experience of near death, and I've even been listening to people talking about pre-birth and all these kinds of things, that there's definitely something that we are, coming from and moving towards.
And do you think that that experience that you had, for me, I think of grace, that, this presence just sort of fills us in that moment, and we know all is well, regardless what circumstances appear to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And so that also for me has lessened. I don't believe I have fear. I often think that we say things until something really happens and we experience it. And this is from my own experience. Things that I've said I would never do, I have been confronted with, So never say never, because you will
Never
have
say
to
never.
face that and test your never. And more than likely you will.
Well,
Right?
I remember saying I would never have more children after my third child was born. And, I solved it, right? Tubal, everything was good. And then I met Pierre in my 40s, and never say never, because I had Genevieve at 48.
Wow.
Never say
Absolutely.
never.
Yeah,
Wow.
sitting here with two incredible women. Yeah, and Janet's also got a TED talk, which if listeners and viewers are interested in, it's well worth watching. Her life has just been absolutely amazing. Um, and tell us a little bit more about the things that you have done since, and if you feel that you were inspired to do those things because of that near-death experience.
Yeah, that's a really good thing. I also wanted to comment when you were speaking about fear, and that one of the I really believe in circles, that we're always moving in circles. I always think that Zoom and that we should have circles instead of squares because there's this linking, and it's really a model when you look at a healthy cell and then it connects to other healthy cells and other healthy cells. I think that it's a beautiful image. And one thing was we actually began a circle group called Freedom from Fear. And it was really about the human condition that, we do have this experience called fear, but how do we transcend that? How do we move that? How do we change that? Like, if we're afraid to do something, that's the very reason we need to do it, right? And so I think that that was quite instrumental following that experience, and getting involved actually within recovery and recovery groups, because that was the next lesson, right? Was to look at the family system and things that needed to be changed and let go of, like just release and let go so that I could be in the new chapter of my life. So working at a comedy club, that was something. I love comedy. And so for many, many years in the early days of comedy, when you couldn't turn on HBO or you couldn't do anything other than to go to a live comedy show unless you went to Vegas. So that was one thing that I think was really important, was to have a sense of humor and just the richness of that experience. I mean, I could go on for days about every experience I had working in a comedy club. So it was, and also the deep richness of my spiritual life in Unity, and going to take spiritual enrichment classes at Unity Village. And I thought I had myself plugged in. You're going to have to bear with me for a moment while I plug in so we don't
so we don't lose you.
Well, and it's interesting when we think about the journey and the places we go and the different things we do.
Yes.
Like, there isn't one straight path. There's like all these different ways. Yeah,
Yes.
I love that. Circles.
Yes. So, and again, what really happened, and I was always kind of a creative person as a kid, but you kind of lose it sometimes. You forget that is our true nature, to be creative all the time, to be creating. New mothers say all the time, well, I'm not creative. It's like, you just birthed a child. That there's nothing more creative than that. So I got very involved in just working with a lot of well-known world leaders and speakers, and bringing them into our center. So in the early days of, like Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, all of these individuals who were change makers, that was a part of what I created after that experience. Like, the list is so long, as it is for everyone. I want everybody to consider right now all of the things that you have done in your life that have changed and inspired and expanded not only your life, but someone else's. You never know when you throw something out how it's going to carry downstream and where you're going to reach, right? So I feel like I could talk for a very long time about all of the things, but what I am so interested in is what other people are doing in their lives. And that's where I came up with this idea of resonance being a connector in your life, connecting as we're doing right now. And communicators. We are communicating all of who we are, all of our authentic, real self. And we become the conduit for the divine, the conduit of the artistic expression, the conduit of the creativity. And when we do that, it changes lives.
It really does.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're going to take a short commercial break. And you're watching Spirit Cafe. Our beautiful guest today is Janet Law, and we have a lot more conversation coming. So do not go away. We'll be right back.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
And we're back. Our guest today is Janet Law, and it looks like we lost Cheryl. She was having some internet challenges.
We're back. We're back, Barbara. Yeah.
We are back. We are back. So we've been talking about all the myriad of things you've done in your life, which is a lot. And we were just touching on the result of near-death experience and where that is taking you into that place of fearlessness. I sometimes wonder, is it fearlessness or is it that I have the courage to face whatever comes?
I think what you just said is true. It really is. I want to hear more about what you have to say about that, Barbara, because that's very profound thought.
Well, I think sometimes when we strive to never have fear, I think we're denying the reality of our experience. And I think it's so important that we allow ourselves to feel what we feel. And at the same time, to know that there's a power within us far greater than any of the illusions we've created around us. And so if we will breathe into the idea, a lot of things we're afraid of course, course, never ever happen. You know, it's like the teenagers are out late at night and it's like, oh no, where are they? What's happened? All the fears running. And at the same time, when they get home, I'm going to kill them. And it's like,
Yes.
there's this weird thing. And there's this fear that something bad is going to happen.
Yeah.
And we're using imagination in quite a destructive way to fabricate an experience we don't want to have.
Yes.
I wonder if they've been hurt. I wonder if they've been kidnapped. I wonder if they've been killed. We get into this whole place of the fear when the truth is that really what we want to do is look at, I'm sort of creating an illusion, and I can use my imagination in much better ways. And if I have the courage to face the fact that I don't know what's going on, and so I'm uncomfortable, but I don't have to be afraid of that. I can choose to be courageous and face it and tell myself a new story. And the new story might be, well, I'm okay. Sometimes we fear, we get to the middle of the month and let's say money's tight, and we get to the middle of the month and 2 weeks later we've got to pay a bill. And right away we get into that, oh no, I don't have enough. What am I going to do? Whoa, just a minute. Stop. Take a moment, take a breath and go, wait a minute, I got a roof over my head. I got food in my belly. Really, I am safe. All is well. And the universe is this glorious creative expression of all things. And so money is merely an activity of energy that moves and flows. So we can begin to change the ideas of fear and go, am I being chased by a lion? If I'm not being chased by a lion, then okay, am I really fearful, or am I imagining things that I could actually change? Because when you change your thinking, you change your experience, you change your perception in your life, your whatever, right? So I think sometimes it's having the courage to really examine the fear that comes up, whether or not it's real. And even if it's real, to know that there is within me a power far greater than any experience in this physical world. And if I will tap that, the answers are there always.
Yes.
And I remember the story of a woman in the US who was being robbed at gunpoint. And when the police showed up, she was kneeling on the floor with the gunman praying.
Wow.
And he had laid his gun down. Obviously, she, tapped in. I'm sure she was afraid when a gun was put in her face, but there was that within her, that conviction that there's a power greater than this.
Yes.
And this person is hurting.
Yes.
And so we look at fear, and I was listening to a podcast the other day where the guy was talking about the fact that people didn't fear sharks until the movie Jaws came out.
Yeah. Right. Even when they were swimming in a swimming pool, they feared sharks.
I know. It's like, so fear can be such a fabrication of our negative imagination.
Yes.
And unfortunately, sorry, Janet.
No, you keep going. Yeah, you go.
I was just going to say, unfortunately, that fear is just as creative, as love and positivity. And I think that people don't realize that. And I don't think fear in the moment, but when we fear something for a long time, and it's almost like a lifelong fear, I've often seen, unfortunately, that fear coming to pass in a person's life. And so I think it's important to recognize that so that we can work on releasing it and recognizing that these are stories that we tell ourselves, that in this moment, which is what you were talking about, Barbara, in this moment right now, there's nothing to fear.
Exactly.
Right? And that's all that matters in this moment right now, because tomorrow is going to become in this moment right now.
Exactly, because there is no tomorrow, there is no yesterday. There's the forever now moment.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I remember a woman who had feared being murdered. She was so afraid of being murdered, and she had her house like bars on the windows and doors, and she just took every precaution imaginable. But it was such a big focus, and she ended up being murdered by her boyfriend who lived with her. And it's like wherever we're putting our attention and intention and expectations, all of those things are creating a potential
Mhm.
realization of whatever it is that we
Mhm.
put forward.
Mhm.
And it's important to begin to shift that, to go, wait a minute, I'm imagining this, let me
Mhm.
imagine something else.
As you were speaking, I was thinking about the human condition of perfectionism, which was a huge, huge issue in my life. And thank goodness for recovery and being able to go to a 28-day program and really deal with the circumstances of my life at that time. And one of the spirals that I would go into is I would get into this feeling of inadequacy, which would then spiral down into a feeling of real unworthiness. And then perfectionism would step in. And if I could only make it perfect, then it would all be okay. And then that would go down into victimhood because, of course, I couldn't make it perfect. And then I would go down into absolute despair. Okay. So, in order for me to understand that cycle and spiral was very important. So
Mhm.
whenever I get that feeling of feeling less than or not enough confidence, I have to ask myself, in this moment, in this now moment, there is none of that. And
Mhm.
the thing about perfectionism is that it won't allow you to write the next chapter of your life until you make all the other chapters perfect, right? So,
And we
yes.
keep raising the bar.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
can never achieve it, right? It's like as soon as you start doing well, like you bump it up so that you just, a perfectionist will never get there.
No, they won't. And so I this picture behind me, there we go.
Yes.
There's a chair holding up the
Beautiful.
this was actually purchased 10 years after I had a diagnosis of very aggressive breast cancer. And at the time, they told me to go home and get my affairs in order. And that was the reality. Well, in that moment, I had to decide that that wasn't going to happen today. Not in this moment, it wasn't. So on the 10-year anniversary of being completely cured of that situation, that malady, this painting I bought because I love surfing. I haven't surfed, but I will do that before I leave this planet. But I love the movie Riding Giants. And if you ever get a chance to watch it, it is about the big wave surfers.
Mhm.
And these people get in the water, and what they are able to do because they are in the moment is absolutely miraculous, and it inspires me. So this painting is a surfer, so that could be any one of us
Mhm.
at the top of the big wave.
Mhm.
Thing is, in order to ride the big wave, you have to be aware of all the waves in between. So you're at the beach and you don't want to go in to swim because you're afraid to swim. Well, I'll go in and I'll put my tiptoes in. And then I'll go about 3 feet. And some people, they will swim miles out. Some people will just be treading water. Like we're all in different stages of the flow of life, right? So this reminds me to remember that we can always be certain that we can ride the big waves when they come, because they will come.
Mhm.
They'll come. So,
Wow.
anyways,
That's beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
I love
beautiful.
that idea that we can do anything.
What
Yeah.
what I do think is important to say here is, for us to recognize too that this is not always something we can do by ourselves. You mentioned a 28-day program. You mentioned work that you've been doing. Help that you sought, and I think we need to realize that sometimes, and I know because I've experienced depression and I sometimes still do. And when I'm in it, it's very, very difficult to get out of it, even knowing, and, intellectually all these things. And sometimes we really do need help, and probably more than most times, I would say, because I think that's also part of the human condition, is recognizing that we don't have to do this by ourselves.
No.
You know, and I think just like you spoke about perfectionism, that's got something to do with blame and shame within us, that we can't reach out. God, you know, God forbid somebody would see who I really am. Or, you know, so I have to keep that secret. I have to keep that within me.
Yeah.
And I think many people who have spoken about depression who lived like that for many years. We talk about depression not being stigmatized anymore. But you know what? I think it still is. You know, I think that we are so conditioned that you can't just say something and it is. I think it takes practice. It takes a different way of thinking when it comes to depression, racism, you know, LGBTQ, sexuality, gender, all those kind of things. We are so conditioned, and we talk about it and try and change it with our words, but we have to go deeper than that.
We have to change it with our actions. We have
Yeah.
to
And our thoughts, we really have to shift something.
shift the
Right?
thinking.
Yeah, we've got to shift something, and teach something different, which for me is a big thing. You know, I was listening to, oh gosh, Morgan Freeman, and somebody asked him something about racism and wealth. And he was saying he doesn't believe that's true, that, you know, everybody has it. You've got to put the work in, you've got to do it, you've got to, you know, whatever he was saying. But what the key for me about the conversation that he was having, and this was with another Black interviewer, and the Black interviewer said to him, I'm so tired of this conversation of, you know, talking about race. And they were saying that when it's in the focus all the time, it becomes problematic, because you're not, I don't know if I can explain it correctly, but you're not really leveling the play field. You're still, you know, creating that division. And so,
Otherness.
and for me, my big thing is, if we continue doing this, our kids are learning it, they're seeing it. And so, but if we didn't, they wouldn't know any different, and it wouldn't be an issue. So how do we deal with that in a way that, I don't know, that changes things?
Well, you know, Cheryl, you just spoke about a really important, very important topic, and that's around depression. And I think because one of the focuses today is around creativity, it was once said by a great mentor of mine that anything that is suppressed, if you suppress it long enough, you will become depressed. And the actual cure or treatment is wholeheartedness and expressing what needs to be expressed. And, you know, I think that's what happens. You know, people haven't found that conscious conversation that they can have with another human being. And that's why, like, these circle groups are so important. Freedom from Fear, the 12-step groups, Course in Miracles, all of these are avenues for expression. And we can then go further with that and start expressing in art, music, writing, being in nature. It's all creative. It's all the creative universe. I mean, the indigenous people around the world got it right. A very good friend of mine was in a group where there were many priests who had asked her to come and speak about the topic of creation. And their perception was that the First Nations people do not have a story of creation the way that Christianity does. And so they wanted her understanding of it. And she said, actually, we do have the story of creation. And the only difference between that and what we would call more fundamentalist Christianity is we didn't get kicked out of the garden. We're in the garden always.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
When I heard that story, I thought, wow. And so my own spiritual life started at a very young age, being brought to a New Thought church called Unity. And like you said, there's many other New Thought churches. And so that gave me an opportunity to increase my own spiritual commitment and knowledge around all of these things. And so many years have been spent through the licensed teacher program at Unity in Kansas City, Missouri. And I have had so many opportunities to develop that part of myself. And I encourage every other person that we're all the same. We're individual expressions, but we are all connected as one resonating force on this planet.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And thank you for saying that. I think it's a much bigger issue than people talk about, especially today.
Yeah.
I know that I was depressed as a child. This has been a lifelong thing for me. I've been on medication, gosh, for 35 years. I even asked an energy healer if he thought I could get off the medication. And he said, obviously you can. He said, but it's going to take a long time because you have to rewire your brain. Your brain has now been wired that way from the medication. So there's, and I know that we believe in healing and using energy and affirmations, but with the faith and trust behind that. And I also know that it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. For some people, it does. For Myrtle Fillmore, who healed herself of tuberculosis, I believe it took 2 years. And she spent hours every day talking to her cells, loving her cells, letting her body know that she's a child of God, of the creator, of source. And therefore she doesn't inherit sickness, which she was told. So I do know that it's a work in progress. And I also know that some of us experience things so that we can empathize with others, so we can know what others are going through. Because one of the things I truly believe in life is that unless we really have been in our own shoes experiencing what somebody else is, we really can't relate. We can't identify.
And I love what you said, Janet, about necessary and unnecessary suffering.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really pivotal point, that the healing happens when it's no longer necessary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what happened for me. It was like a switch got flipped in a moment, but
Mm-hmm.
it didn't happen in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
I've been praying about it for years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the moment when it no longer needed to be there. It was no longer serving a purpose. Whatever it was that I had the necessary suffering, it got me to a place of great empathy for others, which changed the game.
Sorry, Barbara, I didn't let you
ahead.
finish. Yeah, I was just going to say that we're always in our healing place.
Mm-hmm.
We sometimes don't maybe experience or think of it as healing, but we are always in our healing place.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever is happening in this moment is happening for our own spiritual evolution.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have this little reptilian brain in the back here that they say stores, our subconscious stores everything. And if we are created in the image and likeness of the great creative force in the universe that created everything, in the galaxy, then we must, and there must be a purpose for that little brain that stores that. And those are sometimes the things that actually assist us in our evolution, or those things that are difficult, those human experiences that, like I remember when I was diagnosed with cancer, I cannot believe the number of quote unquote spiritually attuned New Thought people who turned to me and said, "What did you do to create that?"
Oh, dear.
And this is a habit of human beings of, spiritual superiority or authority.
Mm-hmm.
We are our own spiritual authority. So when people would say that to me, I'd say, this is a chapter of my life called cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have learned from that and how it helped me to grow, I have done more creative work, since that time than I ever could have imagined.
Mhm.
And I actually took that experience and wrote a play called You and Me, YEU and Me. The second edition will be You, Me, and We, because that's finished. And, got to perform it last year in the theater festival here in Vancouver. And that was an expression of being a conduit. And people came to me afterwards and said, thank you for the message, because I could identify
Mhm.
with that. So when we tell our stories,
Mhm.
give other people an opportunity to tell their story, their story
Exactly.
of their own spiritual evolution.
Exactly. It really amazes me how we are so judgmental, and we talk about spiritual. If I'm spiritual, that's one thing, that makes us spiritual, is being non-judgmental. And
Yeah.
then when it comes to things like that, that is hugely judgmental.
Yes.
Well, and it's
Right?
the story of the book of Job, right?
Yes.
His
Right.
self-righteousness. It
Mhm,
was when
mhm.
he finally let that go that everything transformed. I'm speaking about the book of Job on Sunday, but it's like that idea of, oh, I'm so great, I'm so good. What's in your consciousness? Like
Yes.
that is
Oh, it
very
was
damaging.
it
And
really amazed me,
mhm,
and what the whole team of Circle of Caring that had to be brought together, that people showed up that I didn't think were going to show up. People came out that just, I had such an amazing care team. You just couldn't have imagined how
mhm,
that was. And my beloved Brian, my husband, my son, a healing circle where we would meet every week, naturopaths, all kinds of modalities of healing that were introduced to me that never would have happened had that not occurred. And
mhm.
so we
And
all
the
get
lives that you
this.
touched along the way, Janet, the lives that you came into contact with, the people that had their experiences um, through this chapter of your life.
Yeah.
That's what we don't realize. Everything, there's such a web of connection in so many different ways when things happen. And so for me, it's more about, you know, wow, what did you do to create this wonderful opportunity?
Yes.
It's like, how are we looking at things? And it's not, I really do believe that we choose these things for those purposes and for those reasons, if for ourselves and for others. We have these, I believe, sacred contracts that we make with each
Yes.
other, and so again, as much as we talk about our thoughts, words, and deeds creating, it's also not about what the experience is, the actual incident. It's how we relate to it. It's how we respond to it. That's what we are creating with
Yeah.
our thoughts, words, and actions.
Yes.
And I think we get mixed up with things like that. Same as we sow, so shall we reap. Thinking that, oh, if I'm going to give, I'm going to get back. Well, if you're expecting something outside of yourselves, you're going to wait forever. I
Yes.
think,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Because
Or,
as I give, I get joy. I get,
yes.
it brings me great pleasure, and so I'm receiving in that moment.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's just the way we interpret things, which sometimes is just very, I don't know, I would say just error in thinking.
Well, it is.
All prayers are answered.
Yes.
And the thing is, and you just brought up a good point, like, we really are affirming that we want the red shoes. Okay.
Mhm,
And then blue shoes show up and we're
mhm,
like, I don't want those blue shoes.
mhm,
Well, they don't understand that sometimes the blue shoes are necessary to get the red shoes, because that's how energy moves, right?
mhm,
So
mhm,
we can't judge when
mhm.
things occur that we aren't, necessarily agreeing with. So
Yeah,
the blue shoes.
Yeah. A friend of mine was dying of AIDS, and we got together to pray. And I said to him, I said, you know, what do you want? And he said, actually, he said, I've never been afraid of death, but I've always been afraid of living. And he said, what this has given me is a realization of how loved I am, how supported I am, all of my family coming together. He said, I want to live. And we prayed together, and within 2 weeks, he'd gained 18 pounds. Within 4 months, he was back to work. A couple months later, they couldn't find the virus in his blood. It's like there was a shift. And this was way back when people, if you got HIV, you died, period. And, you know, he had this transformation, but it was a realization of, you know, what he was resisting. So he said, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Yes,
Getting
beautiful.
this illness.
Beautiful,
It was-
beautiful.
yeah.
You know, I worked a lot with comedians for quite a large portion of my life, and you know, very well-known comedians, and I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Robin Williams when he was filming the movie Jumanji in Vancouver, and you know, just that one-on-one conversation with him was filled with beautiful moments because he was just so genuine and so real and so present, you know, and nobody knew that underneath there was other things that were going on. So we never know. And I hope that, you know, we can always feel that even one conversation may have helped a little bit when someone's going through a very difficult, you know, a very difficult time. And in the comedy world as well, I mean, there was a lot of depression.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of that got expressed through comedy on stage. And I felt like even that death experience that I had prepared me to be able to be present in the moment. And we never know how we can affect the resonance, but we are all responsible for the resonance in the room.
Absolutely. Now we're down to our final 3 minutes.
Oh my goodness. That's too fast, Barbara.
It went really fast. It went really fast. Janet, what's one thing you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Well, I think creating a mission for your own life. So I'll tell you mine. I, Janet Law, am a playful, loving woman, who empowers myself and others to be of creative service in the world. And so that statement of truth has helped me through many, many milestones since the time I wrote it. And I would just invite everybody to write those qualities that are in you that you like to express every day. And so, yeah, that's what I would like to say. And be here now, which has been said many times before.
It has. Yeah. And Cheryl, what about you? What would you like to leave people with today?
I'd like to leave them with exactly what Janet said and not spoil that.
Well, you know, it's so true. There is only now, there's nothing else. And if we could just live here now, present with what is, and knowing that all of it is taking us to our greatest good, our greatest expression, no matter how it feels in the moment. That's what I got out of today. So hopefully everybody else got something wonderful. Janet, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Janet.
Yes,
And congratulations on your position on your new position on the Canada board.
Board, woohoo!
Yes.
Join us and play.
I love unity, unity the way up, unity the way round, unity everywhere. That's
it. Yeah, the
That's
joy of the new
beautiful.
thought teaching, it changes lives.
It does.
Absolutely.
New thought changing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have you back because there's so much more to talk about. Janet also created an organization for gifted children. We didn't even get to touch on that. There's just so many things. So, Janet, we'll definitely be having you back maybe we'll do something recorded for the summer. If not, definitely in the fall. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for being
I
here.
love what you both say. That's important, is what happens between us. This is
Mhm.
this is the space.
Mhm.
We're hardwired to bond. We're hardwired to bond.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Connection,
I love
connection, connection.
Yeah.
Thank
Mhm.
you so much. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This is the New Thought Media Network. This is Spirit Cafe with Cheryl and Barbara and our beautiful guest, Janet. And we are so grateful you were here today. Till next week. See you then.
Bye.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.